welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman, and I'm one of your hosts. Every Wednesday and Friday, we bring you interviews with female and non-binary makers of all kinds from all over the world. Today's guest is Becky Blanco of Becky with a Good Repair on Instagram. I have only been following Becky for a small amount of time, really, like given the grand scheme of how long I've been on Instagram. Small amount of time. She's fairly new to the community. But let me tell you, she makes me laugh, and she's got some sweet dance moves. I will say she can rival mine. And I really just wanted to reach out with her. I saw her really getting engaged with the community. So I wanted to reach out to her and give her an opportunity to share her story so all of us can get to know her better. Before we hop into the interview with Becky, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Lee at Lee Runyon, Annette at 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson, Women of Woodworking, Kevin, Lefty's Woodshop, Christy, Twisted Twine, Jeremy Speece, Sammy, Go Sammy Lee, Rachel, Moody Makes, Bonnie, Tool Mom Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura, Oakley Soap Company, Brandy, Studio, Obey, Lee, The Rainbow Carver, Ellen, Little Bear Furniture, Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for being supporters of the podcast, continuing to provide support, and helping to make 2 podcast episodes a week every week. It is truly appreciated. If you would like to get your name added to this list, you certainly can. Just head on over to patreon.com/crafting revolution. And no matter what tier level you pick, your name will get added to this list, and you will be thanked at the top of the episode, every week, because that's how important all of the patrons are to getting this podcast produced. So let's head on into the interview with Becky Blanco of Becky with a Good Repair. Becky, I feel like I've known you forever, but really I have not known you forever. So I'm going to start with, I asked my guests to introduce themselves. So do that for me.
Ooh. All right, my name is Becky at Becky with the Good Repair. I feel like my name has always been a song. Like when I was growing up, it was, oh my God, look, Becky, look at her butt, right? And then like Becky with the Good, it was always some sort of explicit song. So I felt like I needed to lean into that. So, but I am Becky. I have this like Instagram page where I just kind of like live my life and make things, which is pretty cool. And that's where I know you from. And it's funny how we feel like we know these people on the internet and they're our buddies. And the reality is like, we only see them through this Instagram filter, which is like not their whole life. But yeah, I'm super stoked to just get to like hang and let's chat it up.
That's right. Okay. So here's the broad question that I always start with.
Okay.
What is the story of Becky from baby Becky to what you do now? Like, where'd you grow up? Like,
oh man, this is like a 6-hour podcast, right? This is a marathon, 48-hour. The story of Becky. Oh man. All right. Well, Miami, born and raised. Both my parents are Cuban immigrants. So that's like a big part of my story is just my like Hispanic culture and growing up with a Cuban amazing food. And my parents own a Cuban restaurant. So that just food and that Cuban culture was just like a huge part of my life. Grew up in a really conservative Christian home. As an openly queer woman, my wife and I have been married about a year now. This was a really tricky transition for me to navigate and then for my parents to kind of brace themselves for impact. This was definitely a little bit of an Armageddon for them, but they're figuring it out. I think they're trying at the end of the day to show me love, whatever way that makes sense for them. But I grew up in Miami. Man, did sports all my life. Whatever, I went to small school, so whatever sport they let me play, I did it. I basically just wanted the boys to pick me on their team. It didn't happen, but I just wanted to be like better than some of the, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, I played volleyball in college and Oh man, that's where I figured out that I was super gay for sure. Was in college.
It wasn't an indicator before that.
Okay, so I also grew up like Christian, right? And like
Right.
my faith was a huge part of my life. And the
Right.
reality is I grew up with these like blinders, and I think the idea of like a gay Christian like wasn't a thing. Like it didn't make any sense to me. I didn't know that was an option for me. I think, okay, you know how people say like I would have never like I didn't choose this. I would have never wished to be gay. Like that's like a mantra for like a lot of people. But I think like for me, honestly, it was like the opposite. Like I wished that I was allowed to be gay. Like I wished that was an option for me. But for me, I knew that that meant like pushing against everything that I held true.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to suck it up and do, you know, that was my that was my cross to bear.
Yes.
which is so sad, right? I say that like laughing, but it's like just so sad. I wish I just had an awesome queer woodworker in my life as a kid, right? Like that would have been dope if I would have at least known that person. I probably did have one, but I just didn't know.
Right. I was gonna say I grew up like super conservative Christian too. I grew up Lutheran and like not the like we love you even though you're gay Lutheran. The like the, as conservative as you can get Lutheran.
Yeah.
So yeah, mine was like I knew from a young age, but it was like, oh no. Like mine was the years spent trying to pray the gay away. So I like I feel the whole like dichotomy of like, because you can't, right? It's like, what? Yeah. Like Christian and gay, like they just can't go together.
Super bizarre. Yeah. And we can like go into that. I remember being in like 6th grade. Okay, so I must have been maybe like 8 years old. And I remember seeing my mom like help my sister get ready for the prom, right? So they're like doing the hair and stuff. And I'm just kind of walking in the room, like chilling. And then I'm like, ugh, like, why do I have to be a girl? Like, this is like so boring. Like, this is what it is. And my mom being like, Becky, like, it's okay. Like, you get to be a girl. You get to wear makeup and you get to like let a boy open the door for you. And I remember being like, being a girl sucks. And then as I've grown up, having to like redefine what it means for me to be a woman.
Yeah.
Like this standard that society says of what a woman is, that I can, you know, just throw up a big like fuck you to that and say like I'm gonna actually redefine what feminine means, and I'm gonna be hella feminine because I'm a woman and this is what feminine means to me. And it means like being a boss with power tools, and it means being creative and problem solving. Like all those things like are very much me. It's not me trying to be a boy. It's not me trying to be a man. It's me 100% leaning into what I believe to be exactly how God created little Becky to be. Which has been a really cool journey as an adult to finally realize this is who I am, and this isn't something that's like supposed to hold me back. This is my sexuality, my identity, the things that make me a weird girl, right? A weird kid growing up are actually the things that just make me beautiful. Like they're the things that make me and the things that I end up loving most about myself. So as I've like matured as an adult, I came out to my parents at 30 years old. I came out to my family and my church, and my whole world was turned upside down, which was a bizarre thing to have to do at 30. I felt like I was going through puberty. Like it was this really moment of like, oh, this is who I am. I wasn't ready as a kid, right? I wasn't ready. Even in college, it was like, what is happening? But yeah, about 30 came out, met my wife, which was pretty great. We dated and we've been married a year now, which life is so good, Katie. Like, I don't even know what to say. Just life is so good. It's really sweet right now, even in a crazy world right now. For us personally, life is really sweet. So we're enjoying, even though it's been a crazy year. It's been a crazy like 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So I started creating out loud, living out loud, just doing everything publicly. And that's kind of rocked my world. So that kind of inspired me to do the things that I've been doing for a long time, like building and like whatever it was, to do that on the internet for anyone and everybody who wants to know, to talk to me about, which has been wild. But it's been a blast. It's been super fun. So
yeah. I mean, like, so how long, I'll start with the first question being like, how long have you had Becky with the Good Repair, like on Instagram? Like, how long has that been a thing?
Yeah. June, I believe.
Okay.
So, what,
Yeah.
6 months, like 5 months? Yeah, not too long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember we bought our house in April. And my wife took a trip to Turkey for a few weeks. And while she was gone, I remember being like, I'm going to buy a miter saw. And she will never know. and genuinely having this moment of like, I'm holding a chainsaw. There's nobody home. Nobody knows I'm using this. Like, maybe this isn't the best life choice ever. So like putting down the chainsaw.
Yeah.
I'm going to rethink this. And when she gets home, we're going to have some good conversations about how I can safely do these projects. So that I'm not doing them in secret or when she's out of town. So that I think her being away caused me to be like, how am I filling my time and what's bringing me joy? And definitely just doing things myself. I'm not the kind of person that I want to take apart a clock and like figure out how it works. Like that's just not how I tick. And I know there's a lot of people that really like love to figure things out. I'm more like, I don't know, like what's a solution nobody's thought of before? Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily want to know how everybody else does it. I don't necessarily want to know how it was intended to be used. I want to know, would it be more effective if the clock was, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like a different kind of way. I feel like those like problem solving solutions are much more the things that get me like excited about like DIY or like figuring out how to make things myself. So that's the kind of like DIY world I want to live in. I'm still figuring it out. Pretty to the Instagram world in this like particular account.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like, but okay, so you started about 6 months ago with the Instagram, but have you been like kind of DIY making for a while?
So like power tools, like not really. I would say power tools maybe like a year. And I want to say power tools is really where I've realized that like life is good here, like in the power tools, like this is where I want to be. But for a long time, I would say I want to say I just tick differently. So the way I see the world and the world's problems and wanting to fix them has been different. So I think I've been a creator or a problem solver, like always. Yeah. I think I've always been a little bit odd that way, which is awesome. Like I love that about myself now. But I think in college, I remember getting a sewing machine my first time, maybe like a sophomore in college. And that year, like making gifts for all my roommates. I remember like reupholstering a chair in like my mid 20s, because it was this like really old, disgusting recliner that I thought just needs some different fabric. Right. So, like, hammering in the middle of the night. So like everything I did was always on like the like low budget, like hammer and like thumbtacks, and we're gonna make this work. And now having the resources and having the right tools and realizing like, oh, I can actually do things at a caliber of what I would buy in a store or what I would pay somebody else to do. Like, oh, let's make shit happen. Like, let's go ahead and like really repair this window and not just like duct tape it. You know what I mean? Like, let's actually learn how the pros do it and how do I make it happen as well. So that's been like super fun. And I think that's been like the journey of like the Becky with the Good Repair for me. Yeah.
Did you come to Instagram? Do you feel like you came to Instagram to share more or to like immerse in like this maker community and like learn from it?
No. Okay. So I started this account. It's so funny. So I had done these, like, I had gone a little crazy for like 2 weeks. So my wife was out of town in Turkey. And then decided to share on my personal account, like what I had done, and been like, I don't know if anybody cares, but if you all care, I'm going to share. Just click through these stories if you're not interested. So I did that. And people were like, where's your HGTV show? Like, what's going, why are you holding out on us? People didn't realize like what I could do. And, you know, that this wasn't what I did for a living. And so I think that kind of put in my head, like, oh, like, it might be a little strange to share this in a personal account. Like maybe I started my own account, thought of a cool name, and was like, ugh, we're just gonna do this. It's gonna be great. So started the account really to just like live out loud, right? Share what brings me joy and hoping that it brings other people joy. Like that was the premise of not to like do much more than that. I remember at the very beginning, I followed one person, and it was an account that I had followed in my personal account. I thought this maker was this awesome woman that like killed it in what she did. And I thought like, I'm going to follow this person. That person happened to go to this big conference called Haven. And at the Haven conference, that person shared like 20 other people. They're all talking about networking and getting to know other makers. And I remember thinking like, I think I'm doing this wrong. Like, why am I not following anybody? So for like the first like month of my account, I hadn't followed anybody. It was all very me centered, which is cool. Yeah. But it was very just me like awkwardly figuring out like, what even is this account? I remember early on being like, do I have to tell them I'm gay? Like that, I got to tell them, right? Like at some point. And now I would say my account's so queer, like centered because it's centered around me, right? Like it's such an obvious like sex positive, queer positive space that it's to me like bizarre that I even had the question of like, is this going to be weird to tell people that I'm gay, or you know what I mean? And I think that's me. Those are my growing pains, right? Of like figuring out as an adult queer of like what you're constantly putting out to something. So yeah, at the beginning, I didn't follow anybody. It definitely wasn't about the community. And now it's the meat and potatoes. Now it's like, oh, like these are like dope ass humans that are like doing really cool things. Primarily women. I follow like 2 guys. They're all right. But primarily women that are just like bosses in their field. And it's not very few of them. This is their professional full-time job. For most of them, this is something that they get to release and get to process their life through these power tools. And it's just super cool to see people turn their houses upside down. It's awesome. So I learned a ton from the community that I've been able to like be a part of. So it's been cool.
Hey makers. So today's podcast episode is sponsored in part by Alicia Van Osdal, who is the owner of Basil Blue Design Company. Alicia is a maker of all things, really. Her focus is on beautiful craftsmanship through woodworking, repurposing, refinishing, art, and sculpture. Her background includes 30 years of graphic design, logos, and branding. If you have an idea or concept and need a creative solution or graphic design, you can email Alicia directly at Alicia, and that is ALICIA at basilblue.com. Or you can visit her website at www.basilblue.com. And fun fact, Alicia actually designed the logo for Crafting Revolution. So that is an example of the impeccable work you can expect if that is something you are in the market for. So be sure to look up Alicia again at her website, basilblue.com. All right, let's get back into the action. Yeah, I would say like, I think you went through your growing pains much quicker than I did. I feel like my first like year that I was on Instagram, because so the reality is like, so my Freeman Furnishings is almost 5 years old. It will be 5 years old in January. So I started maybe like a month or two. Like after that, I got like an Instagram, but before that, I didn't even have a personal Instagram because so I'm 5 years older than you, which seems like we talk about this in the queer community, like micro generations that happen especially when you start talking about when social media like came on the scene. So right when I like left college, Facebook was just a thing, like just happening. It was
that was my freshman year. My freshman year of college was like the iPhone and Facebook, or like, you know, all these things that it was like, what is happening?
Exactly.
Brace for impact. This is a big deal. Yeah.
So I had Facebook because that's like, you know, I'd post pictures of my kids, and that's like how I kept tabs on like family and stuff like that. But I didn't have an Instagram, and I have 2 younger sisters that are twins. They're 23 now. So they would have been 18 when I started my business. And they were like, you have to get Instagram, Katie. And I was like, why? Like, I'm like, why? I don't understand it. Like,
I can put pictures on Facebook. So
exactly. It's like, why do I need to do this? And they're like, you just have to. I was like, fine. So like, I mean, for like at least the first 6 months, I was posting with no hashtags. And I wasn't like, I think I might have been following like you said, like one other like woodworker. Other like I wasn't going out and following people. Actually, I think I was like following whoever recommended because they were Facebook friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't I had no knowledge of it. And it took a while to be like, oh. And so because I think going into it, like I was going into it as a business. And so I was like, well, I should only be sharing out, right? I'm like trying to get people to see my shit, to buy my shit. Like
Yeah.
that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
That is all the reason I'm here.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, you can scroll all the way back to the beginning and see, like, yes, I'm posting more like finished, product photos. Now, I hardly ever post a finished product photo. In fact, that's like the most common complaint I'll get is like, you share all the process, but you never show what it looks like when it's done.
What are you making?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it morphed over time into like, yeah, finding like the community and like really going, okay, like diving into that to now where it's like, now I have those questions of like, if I want to sell product, can I even do that from this account anymore? Because this account's become more about the community of makers versus what I'm actually making to sell. Yeah. Like it doesn't make much sense to me, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's cool. Like letting people get to see like the human that is behind the business. Like, I think it's really easy to get caught up in the like perfect picture on Instagram. Yeah. And I think just living in stories, right? Living in the like, this is what's going on today, and this is the fail that I'm going to fix, and this is what problem solving, and it's great. How's it going for you all? Okay, all right. Just kind of letting people in on that journey with you. I think sometimes, or at least early on, I felt like, well, I have to be the like expert in the field, and I have to be the one where people come to me for like questions. And the reality is that, like, at least for me, like, I don't have a business, right? So I'm not selling anything particularly. So that's exhausting and kind of inauthentic because I'm figuring it out. Right. So like, who am I? If I'm going to be the expert in the field, I'm always going to be out expertised. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to be outwitted by others in the field, but I can be me better than anybody else, right? I can be 100% me. So yeah, I think the idea of like the process videos being kind of where we live is a fun one.
Yeah. Eventually I'll show like a finished product, If
it ever happens. Yeah.
If it ever happens. Yeah. And then the queer bit, I mean, I'm proud that you kind of dove in quickly. Like I waited a few years before I like came out on Instagram. I won't say I was ever like inauthentic, but I played the pronoun game and I like walked, the thin line, and like because I was so worried, especially in the woodworking world, like it being predominantly like male and cishet male. I'm gonna say there wasn't fear there of like losing followers, because in the grand scheme of it, it's like I don't really care how many followers I have. It was like legit fear of like, when I like see this person in real life, is there gonna be some kind of like confrontation about this? And I would say like, I mean, I had some negative like feedback, I guess you would say, when I came out like the very, very first time. And then, the following like year that I went to Workbench Con, I wouldn't say it was like a negative interaction, but there were some cishet men who had to talk about it with me. Yeah. Like kind of more of a line of thought of like, well, why do you need to share your business with us? And kind of being like, because there's other queer people out there who need to know that there's queer people in this space. Like, This actually isn't about you. It's about like the people who don't identify as you.
Yeah, the visibility portion, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
huge. I think, oh man, yeah, it's a hard conversation to understand when you're not on the inside, right? As an outsider looking in, somebody who maybe isn't exposed to a lot of queer people in their life. Um, I try to like empathize, but the reality is like it shouldn't be my job, right? To like
Right.
I you know what I mean? Like I think because there's this stigma of feeling closeted, right? A lot of times the reaction, at least for me, has been like, I'm just going to unapologetically live my life. And if that offends or if that is uncomfortable, it's better that you know that now.
Yep.
Better that you, if it's not for you, then this just isn't the account for you. And we can just keep on moving. I would imagine that like your shoes of having to like redefine or like figure out like how do I like seamlessly transition this, that yeah, that would have been a shitty conversation with people. And that's like super unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate that like I don't know, that people feel like they need to have that conversation with you of like why, like it's your account and you can do whatever you want. And like, what do you mean why? Like you don't have to do it. You don't have to pay. You know, like you know what I mean? Like do whatever you want. Right. So why try to narrate what I'm doing on my account?
Yeah.
I know that for me, since I've been out, every time I am doing a video, my wife like comes in the background or something like that. It spurs conversations. It spurs conversations in like in the DMs. People will reach out to me and say, you know, really kind things. Sometimes kind of passive aggressive things, but for the most part, the people that are there for me are for me, right? So I'm excited, and I'll get a lot of comments that like, oh, my nephew is queer, or my, you know, stuff like that. And sometimes people will be like, my sister doesn't approve, and I'm trying to be a good aunt. What do I do? You know, and those kind of conversations is like, okay, let's get after it. Like, let's have that conversation. Do I have the perfect answer? Like, no, but that to me is like a really beautiful pocket of like being a queer in any field, is you get to like be a part of the conversation for people that don't know who to talk to because they don't maybe have anybody in their community, but they know this stranger on the internet that is queer and might want to talk to them. So I'm like this non-threatening person because I'm probably never going to see them in real life. So
you're the lesbian aunt is what you're telling me.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, auntie for yeah. I get to just, you know what I mean, like coddle the straights a little bit and be like, all right, let's this is how you can be an ally, you know what I mean? Like this is how you can step up to the plate and be there for a young queer person. I think that's also for me, like the people that I interact with, the people that I share, the people that I go on live with, like for me, those people have to be affirming. Like it just like it's a no-brainer. Like and there's people that I wanted to like invite into the community and like collaborate with somehow, and realize like our values don't really line up. And like if I put somebody at the like on a square on my page that is that a queer might see me and be like, oh cool, Becky's vetted that person, ooh, let's check them out, and then realize later on wait, that person's actually gonna like look at it a certain way, or maybe make it's not I just can't do it. It is what it is. That's just like that's the line that I've had to draw, which is hard because you don't want to, like, at least for me, I don't want to be that person that's like, well, if you're not for me, then get off my page. But the reality is like, get off my page. Like I can't.
But I mean, and I've said this in other podcast episodes, we have a right to create a safe space for ourselves.
Yeah.
We absolutely have that right. So I'm kind of done apologizing. And because I mean, like my lived reality and your lived reality is very different from a cishet white male. Like it just is. Like they can't even comprehend. I mean, I remember being like in real life going to a class, like I was going to a class for my profession, and I'm in this room and like just having conversation over lunch, right? And like I like they knew that I am queer in this room, and like having a conversation about like when my wife and I moved back to Iowa from California, like we specifically were like had the conversation that, well, we're going to live in the Iowa City area because it has the largest queer population in the state, and we want our kids to be able to go to school where there's potential for them not to be the only kids to have same-sex parents. Like that being a thought process, and this woman just being like, oh my, like that's something you have to think about. Like I've never even had to like have that conversation. Or like when, you know, I talk about my wife and I having kids, and then the question, you know, comes up, okay, well, did you adopt or, you know, did you gave birth? Did you both give birth or just you? I did. Okay, did you do a donor? Did you know them? Like, I'm like, do I come to your heterosexual like space and be like, what position were you in when you conceived this child?
Okay, so we were shopping for our wedding rings. We were engaged, and we were like, okay, we're gonna get the wedding bands. We went to the shop, yeah, and the lady was like, oh, congratulations, oh, and like super like, oh, yeah, you guys are great, and they'd be like, have you thought about kids? Like, would you adopt? Would you whatever? And me being honestly feeling like, do you ask your heterosexual couples that are looking for a wedding band? Right. This isn't Babies R Us. This isn't like a wedding band. What position they're going to use? Are they going to use in vitro? Are they planning to adopt? It's none of your fucking business. And why in your mind, just because in your mind, it's like, I wonder how they have sex. I wonder how they're thinking. How could they fit into my norm? Because they have to want kids, because they have to like be thinking, eat sperm. Obviously they're incomplete. So how are they going to, like, your mind goes in a weird place and you don't realize it, right? They're just trying to maybe start conversation or something. But yeah, unfortunate that feels like such a, to me, that's one of those taboos that's like, stop asking queer people how they're going to have kids. Just stop. It's none of your business. None of your business.
I know. Or it goes even, you know, it usually goes further because it's like, well, we used a donor. Oh, did you use the same donor for both kids? Yes, they are full siblings. Just the whole like, you know, conversation. Though I will say those conversations has taught me a lot in just like how I have conversations with other women, specifically around kids. Like if I meet women, you know, who are like older than myself, and, you know, straight women who are older than myself and like have no kids. Yeah. I never like interject like, oh, you didn't try, or you just maybe couldn't have any, or like, because who knows, maybe they just didn't want them. Like, absolutely, you know, all of these things, or maybe they wanted them so bad and tried for a really long time and couldn't have them. And as somebody who dealt with infertility issues, it's like, I also understand how painful that is to revisit when somebody like you said, is probably just trying to start a conversation, but totally like steps right into your trauma, like steps like right into it.
Society has these like, it's these like stepping stones for a woman, right? Yep. So you're supposed to be this like young, like feminine, girly girl, figure out your life. Eventually you get upgraded to like a boyfriend, or you get eventually upgraded to wife, right? That's like the next, like, ooh, you got married, right? And then you get upgraded to the like epitome of what it means to be a woman, which is mother, right? Like the woman evolved at her highest form is mother. And the idea that like as a queer person, I disrupt that in a lot of different ways. Yes. And how like a straight person has to like reboot and say like, what's your evolution? Like, how do kids, right? Or like, how do you do that? You know, and the idea that like, I don't know that that's how it has to work at all. I don't know that I want kids, but maybe we'll check in a couple of years and see what happens. But the idea that like woman equals feminine equals motherhood or equals incomplete until she finds her husband. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just a really strange, I don't know, evolution of womanhood that is so ingrained in our society and so unfortunate because so many women don't fit that mold and shouldn't have to.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, to that point, I was thinking of that actually when you said about like you're defining femininity like for yourself, like what that looks like for yourself. And I was thinking about that, and actually it was like my brain touched on the whole like troubles with like infertility and stuff, because I remember like because of the queer journey and not having those like internalized homophobia is a thing. So not having the like stepping stones that everybody else had, I remember feeling like I'm not quite a woman, you know, like even though I'm like married and all of this stuff. And so it's like, okay, we're going to have kids. And then feeling like, well, fuck, I can't even do this right. Like, I can't even do this one female thing right. Like, I can't get pregnant. Like, it was a whole, like, it totally messed with my head, that whole journey. And so, like, I guess I want to pivot and be like, okay, how does to you, because you also talked about like power tools, like, how do you feel like that defines femininity for you?
I remember the first time I had gotten a circular saw. I think that was my first like real power tool, right? I had a drill, but I think circular saw. It's my first time being like, I'm gonna get something really dangerous and it's gonna be awesome. And I got this thing, I like unbox it, and I literally am like, I'm gonna plug it in. I'm just like sitting on the floor, like with the like styrofoam all over me, whatever, just trying. And I remember just like turning it on and being like, am I aroused right now? Like, is this a boner? Is this like what is happening right now? Like just feeling so powerful, like that, like turned on in the sense of like I am just feeling so, I don't even understand, like alive. I wasn't even cutting anything. It just was literally just the sound, almost like the revving of a car engine. It just was this really like, I can't believe I'm holding so much power that I wield, that I don't. I am able to cut through a house. You know what I mean? Like I am able to destroy or build as I choose because now I have the tools. And that being this like really cool moment for me to realize I am powerful, like beyond what I've ever given myself credit for. So it's definitely like caused me to lean into that, like for sure, lean the fuck into that idea of like, I am powerful and capable and with the right tools, like unstoppable, right? Mm-hmm. It's a really, really cool way for me as an adult woman to look at myself, where the first 30 years of my life, I felt very limited and very stunted and very unable to ever fully get what I really truly desire because it just wasn't an option, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, the power tools is like a huge turning point for me, like in this weird, like philosophical way, for sure.
I think like that thing you're trying to explain is why, and since I know you're on the up and up when it comes to Instagram, I'm sure you know this sound, like it's like a woman and it's always like, I'm feeling like testosterone, like
I want to go to war.
Yeah. But there's something like, I love it, but there's also something that really bugs me about it every time I see it. And it's because I think you're hitting on it. It's still like equating this like power tools and, you know, sense of agency to being manly.
Yeah.
And I'm now like, but that's not me. Like, I don't feel manly.
Now I know what it means to be a man, or now, which is what I did too, right? When I said like, is this a boner? Like, is it like, this must be what it feels like to just feel like totally alive. Because in our society has told us that that's what it is to be a man, to be powerful. So there's no way that, you know what I mean? Like, it's super interesting to kind of think back and be like, huh, why do I equate that with, like, I'm a lesbian, like, come on, Becky, like, what are we doing? It's really interesting.
That sound is silly, right? And it's been around for a while and I totally get the gist of it, but it's just like, I really do find a hard time because I was listening to I'm definitely a big podcast listener, so but I hardly ever listen to maker podcasts anymore. Um listen to philosophical ones, all the woo-woo ones. So listening to Glennon Doyle, and her and Abby were talking about they went to some retreat, and Esther Perel was there, who, if nobody is aware of who Esther Perel is, she's like a therapist, a couples therapist, a sex therapist. She's like a goddess. And her voice to listen to is just like, oh. But she was there and she asked this question to like all the people who were at this, whatever they were at, of what do you like, what do you do that turns you on? And not necessarily in the sense of like, what are you doing sexually to yourself to turn yourself on, but what do you do that turns you on? So when you said that, like, am I like, it's like, yeah, like when I get in my gear to go in the shop, I'm like, oh yeah. Like, I'm feeling badass at this moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand. It's a power trip. It's a power trip in the best way possible, in the best way.
Yeah. So I think I would think that most of the women or women identifying makers that we chat with in this space like probably feel very similar in that way. How do you think we start flipping the script though, from like we're badass because we're taking power that's normally manly to we're badass because we're claiming like our femininity in this space?
Man, that's good stuff. I have no freaking idea, man. I have no idea. I want to give some great answer about what.
Damn it! I was hoping you had the answer, Becky. Come on,
stick it with me. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I think it's, for me, it's the idea that being feminine can look just like my name. You know what I mean? Like can look just like my fingerprint, and can be very unique to me, and how that's like such a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And how like the more I come alive, the more I like realize what turns me on, realize what makes me feel alive, is like me leaning into like who I am and like the things that like make me tick, and how all those things are like feminine. They are like woman at their core because they are me at my core.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeesh, I don't know, but I love the conversation. I love the like thinking behind it for sure.
Hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag woodworkher on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also, great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action. Well, I want to fold into like, I'm wondering, so you didn't bring it up yet, but I know that you still work in the church.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing, man.
I'm just gonna leave that there, let that fall.
It's been like I don't know how. I don't know how I'm still working at a church. I don't know how I'm still a person of faith. I think honest, like for real, and like people that like are people of faith, like do you? This isn't me at all trying to be like preachy and weird. Genuinely, like I don't know how like God hasn't given up on me yet. You know what I mean? I think that's like how I look at it. I just feel like for whatever reason, I still feel this longing to connect with God. And I have found a community, like a church group, that loves me exactly the way I am and wants to celebrate that and wants me in a position of leadership at the church and wants me in a position where I get to look after little ones and make sure that like young like queer children have a safe place and that all of our children feel like they are perfect and beautiful and wonderful exactly how they are. So I'm again leaning into that, right? Leaning into a place that like values me. And for whatever reason, it's this church. So I'm in a really interesting spot right now. And I don't know how it's possible that I'm still a Christian after all these years and after all this like religious trauma and like all this like bullshit that I've like been through. But here we are.
I'll say good on you. I think too many human beings have ruined church for me, unfortunately. I'm trying to connect, stick with me here on this little fine thread that I'm trying to connect that I'm seeing, which is this belief of like leaning into like full femininity being you, because you are, you know, feminine and beautiful as you are, with that like Christian upbringing. Because I think right, at least as a kid, we're told like we're created in like God's image and therefore like we are perfect, like they're, and then they ruin that once you get past childhood, but but that's what you're told as a kid. So I'm wondering if there's some of that like overlapping for you where it's like you're really leaning in on the same thing. It's really one and the same.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that like as I realize like who I am, as I like realize like who I was intended to be, like like God made me and was excited about there being this like Becky in the world and was excited about like what I was going to become and how now at my happiest, at my most joyful in life, at my most at peace in life, God is like most proud of me. God is most like that a girl, like yes, killing it, like get him, like yep, show him like all the things. I think I get to like reflect like God in a weird way. I get to like be this like light in a way. There's probably like a million plot holes or like in that theology or in that thing. But in my mind, I like to think that I was made with intention, that I was made with design. As I understand like my manual, right? As I understand like how I was intended, that I get to work better. I get to like live life more fully and live life more purposefully and like just with happiness, honestly. Like just, I'm not trying to say that like if you know God, life is better or happier or whatever, but at least for me in this phase of my life right now, I am more at peace with who I am than I've ever been. And I have to equate that to me finally getting myself, finally understanding myself a little better and being okay with that and not fighting myself, not trying to hold this like beach ball underwater of like who I'm supposed to be and like, keeping that under control, but realizing like that was never intended to be underwater, right? That was never to be the life that I lived at odds with my own self. So
yeah. I think that's what our 30s are for.
So far, so good. So
yeah. No, I definitely feel like I grew a lot as like an adult in my 30s, and you really could not pay me to go back to my 20s. Like ever. Unless I could go back and be like out earlier, then maybe. But yeah, I'm also realizing like you are kind of intentionally stepping into places that put you at odds in many communities. And what I mean by that is being gay and Christian puts you at odds in both the Christian and the gay community. And then being Cuban American female in the like DIY woodworking space, which is making, some more strides in the right direction, at least maybe more gender equality strides, but still there are not a lot of people of color in that space, or are not represented in that space. I'm not going to say people of color don't do that. I'm just saying they're not represented. So like you're putting yourself like in this huge intersection of all of these things.
Yeah.
How do you keep from like losing your mind of like standing that ground?
Imploding.
Yes.
Breathing into a paper bag.
Yes.
I think a core value for me is that I'm a disruptor. I think I love to go against the grain. And again, as I've come into my own realizing that part of like who I am is to be a disruptor, and that's like a really fun thing. It obviously is probably really annoying to people that I disrupt, but my wife is not on this podcast, so we're just going to say it's a great thing and it's wonderful and it serves me well. I think it's a blast. I think at least right now, it gets to me, you know what I mean? Like in a couple of years, I might say, well, these are the boundaries I've set in place. And this is kind of how I've managed to make this a long-term thing. Again, I've only done this for 5 or 6 months. So like, who am I to say that I've like cornered the market on like being a healthy DIYer that's at odds with everybody that they talk to? Every community that I want to identify with is actually a little bit like, but right now it gets to be fun. I get to like walk into the room and be like, oh, I didn't know that about you. Like, oh, that changes what I thought. I get to be the underdog in a really cool way, and prove people wrong, which I think is also a blast. And I think that's also like a really fun part about being a woman, realizing like her power is getting to like say like, okay, let me show you an underdog. Let me like show you what I can do. So, yeah.
I want to talk a bit about physical space. Have you entered any like physical making or woodworking spaces outside of your own?
No. So I want to say no, because this is something, as far as power tools are related, I've picked up during quarantine, right? I picked up in the past a little bit.
Right.
So I don't really have a social community outside of the internet that is like a maker space, which is pretty shitty because it's like I have all these cool people that I know that like are in different time zones. And these are cool people and I want to hang out for Halloween. What are we going to go to a party or not? Like what's going on? And the idea that like those aren't, they're not really here in Raleigh. Like we don't get to hang is totally a bummer. So I would love to one day go to WorkbenchCon. I would love to one day, get to like step foot in those physical spaces. At the same time, maybe I do get to like hide a little bit behind a screen and at a safe distance, be a disruptor, right? Get to do it on my terms and in my way, on my stories, and do that in a really safe place, which I think there's some value to that as well. But I haven't really stepped into a lot of like communal spaces where everybody would like turn ahead. I want to say like walking into like my hardware store often gets to be a very like male dominated heteronormative space where I get to ask questions and stuff. I think unfortunately I typically will play the damsel in distress in order to get the help that I need, because I'd rather do that than give them the like full story of like what's going on. So I will like use what society already assumes about me to like my advantage. But that's kind of where I am right now.
Okay. Because I just wanted to, I guess, ask about maybe a theme that's been popping up, probably because I'm driving it subconsciously, but a theme that's been popping up on podcasts, which is just that safe space. And I'm with you, like behind a screen, right? It's like I can control that interaction to a degree. Like if somebody starts being an ass, I can just block them. Like I don't have to like take it any further. However, if they're sharing a physical space, for one, I'm less likely to share anything that I see as like a vulnerability that would allow somebody, to take power in that situation. And again, I feel like you potentially are putting yourself or have put yourself in multiple arenas in your life. Like even just coming out 5 years ago to your church and everything like that, like walking back into that space, even if there's people there that love you, is not easy.
I physically moved across the country, right? So I grew up in Miami and now I'm in Raleigh. And that happened like right on the precipice of me coming out, dating this woman long distance and realizing like, we're just dating and we might break up. And then like, did I really risk everything for this person that like the idea that I would have to like sloppily figure out what it meant to be an openly gay Christian, that like what what did this look like? And the idea that I was doing that so close to so many people that knew me BC, right? That knew me in the closet, and realizing that like I needed to like figure my shit out on my own. So I took a huge risk and moved to Raleigh, which is where she was. But I think that was a huge part of me finding a safe space where I could like rebuild my community. And I know that maybe not everybody has that like luxury. They can just like pick up and move to a different city. But I want to say like, as far as like physically finding like my people and my space, I don't know that I ever would have been as like fully alive in my head. And I don't, maybe there's a day I can go back, but yeah, I think it always would have been this like self-doubt, this wondering who I'm going to run into at the store kind of place. Yeah. I think for me now, as far as like my safe places, looks like me standing up for myself in new ways. So maybe not necessarily like in a queer, like maker kind of space, but just even every single waiter I've ever had in my life, not my life, sorry. Every single waiter I've ever had once out has asked if we're one check or two.
Yes.
It's every single waiter.
Yep.
And learning now to say, I don't need the reminder that I don't look like a couple, like that I'm not married to my wife. Like I don't need that from you. We're gonna let you know what we need. That's not a question that you need to ask two guys, two girls. If it's a party of 4 girls, they're gonna let you know how to separate the checks. Like you don't have to ask. And I know if we were a man and woman in their 30s, that's a question you would have asked. Yes. So we don't, me figuring out how to voice what I need and what I expect even from strangers is really tricky waters to navigate, but that's part of me continuing to create like a safe place that I know when I go out, I know that I have like the tools necessary to be able to speak well for my family, speak well for myself, let my wife advocate for herself as well. Like these are all like really important things that we're like learning to navigate. I would imagine in the maker world that I'm going to run into that as well. I haven't had the chance to do that a whole lot, but yeah, as a queer person, you're constantly coming out to the waiters or the people at Home Depot or whatever.
And if you have kids, it's even worse.
Ooh, yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah. For one, you can't hide it. Like you can't even hide it out of safety concerns when you have kids, right? They call us mommy and mama. There's no hiding that. And we've dealt with issues in front of them, but that's the way of the world. I would say like conference wise, like Workbench Con, I'm sure everybody will give you a hug. You'll be fine. Yes. I'm thinking more of like, and I guess I don't know and where you're at though. I will say, have you hooked up with Mary Lou, Made by Mary Lou? Like she lives in Raleigh. Like you guys should like you guys should totally. Yes.
She's Made by Mary Lou. Okay.
Yes. But like at least in my area of the country, like a wood shop is still predominantly going to be male, still like all white male. I don't think I've ever seen somebody who's not white. And all heterosexual and all like 60 plus. So like that's what I'm seeing if I'm walking into a wood shop, right? And so it's like I have to mentally prepare myself walking into that space.
Yep.
I have to actually make myself more masculine walking into that space. Like I can't lean into the femininity. I have to make it read across my forehead, fuck off. I don't want you. I don't need you. I don't need anything from you. Like, I don't need you to show me how to use a tool. I don't need you to like ask me what I'm making. I don't need you to do any of that. Like, and I think the people at like the local like hardware stores have finally got that message. All of them leave me alone. You know, like it's like, yes, you know, if I need you, I will find you. Like, don't need it. And that's to be said, like probably to the average person like who would hear that would say like that's sounding like a raging like bitch, like just somebody who's like, you know, not open to whatever. But it's not. It's out of like actual concern for physical safety. That's not like being hysterical. That's like, you know, legit concern out of for physical safety in spaces. And I think go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think being able to like voice or communicate, however that is, to be able to communicate what you need walking into a space, I think shouldn't be seen as you being unrealistic or hysterical or like a bitch or anything like that. Like it's unfortunate that that's seen that way. But yeah, I think you should absolutely be able to have a big fuck off sign, like for that to be very clear, for you to be able to send those signals in a way that is understandable to the like men that are in that space. That like, oh, I better be weary. Like, good. Yes. You should.
Yes.
You should be. You know what I mean? Like that's
yes.
It's like the question of like, why do motorcycles like have such like rev, like such loud engines? And it's, are they just being jerks and they're so rude with their loud engines? And it's mostly so other cars know that they're there and they don't get hit and they don't die, right?
Right.
Like, they want the cars because they could get hit very easily.
Yeah.
So they put these giant extra pipes to make sure they're super loud so everybody knows that they're loud and they don't get hit. This is our equivalent. This is like our version of, hey, I'm here, everybody. Okay, all right. With the live people, everybody play it cool because I don't want to Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And on that note, we're like at the end of our time together. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I want to give you another chance to let people know how they can find you and follow along with you.
Yeah, no, it's been a blast for sure. Chatting it up and just kind of getting to talk through all the things. But yeah, my name is Becky. I'm at Becky with the Good Repair on Instagram. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. And thanks again for chatting with me today.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Okay, again, that was Becky Blanco with Becky with the Good Repair on Instagram. I'll include the links on how you can follow along with her in the show notes for today's episode. The places that you can find those is first, check the description box of the episode on your podcast app that you're listening to me on right now. Then if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, you can check the description down below. And lastly, you can head on over to freemanfurnishings.com/podcast and find today's episode as well as all the past episodes. Including all the way back to the very beginning when it started as Maker Mom. So you can head on over there and find all the links and all the good stuff there. Please remember to follow along with the podcast over on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution. And if you like today's episode, which there's no pressure to like today's episode, but if you like today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, like, and follow so you get notified when there are new episodes. And if you're feeling extra generous, head on over to iTunes, Spotify, leave a 5-star review. That really helps us out. Quick announcement to let you guys know that the last new episode is going to be Wednesday, December 22nd. And then there will be no new episodes for the rest of 2021. And we'll be back with brand new episodes January 5th, Wednesday, January 5th. So just to let you know, there's going to be a little bit of a break in there for holidays and kids being home and all that good stuff. When I am not interviewing amazing people like Becky and producing podcast episodes, you can find me designing and making furniture and home decor and power carving and dancing in my shop at freemanfurnishings.com and at Freeman Furnishings across all of the social media platforms, especially Instagram and TikTok, where I'm the most active. So come on over at Freeman Furnishings, say hey. And I'm always happy to see people who listen to the podcast there. All right, so we're halfway through the week. I hope you're having a fantastic week so far. And as always, let's go craft a revolution.